Good afternoon, Many Face Publishing. Got to start the video over. Laying down right now with my son. He's a little cranky. I started my last video off by, offering my condolences to the Simpson family. Rest in peace, OJ. Shout out to Cam and Mace, for giving a brother a platform and allowing his voice to be heard by the public once again. Took a lot of heart for them to do that. So now moving forward, I wanted to talk about boxing. We had some news in boxing with Jaron Boots Ennis going to leave, not really leave, but he signed with Matchroom, and now it seems like he'll be fighting on his own. You have a lot of people on the internet rejoicing this. Before, he went to the zone, people hated PBC fighters. Fighters are, like we put a lot of pressure on some of these fighters, and a lot of them are not in control of their careers and the moves that are made. Some are, some ain't. You gotta understand, people don't understand that it's all kind of layers that come with business and sports and things like that. And sports is a business. At the end of the day, people are out here to make money. People are out here for legacy. Some fighters fight for legacy, some fight for money, or some fight for both. But you have, a lot of fighters, are hated just because there were certain individuals. And it's like, this is the nastiness of, our society. But at the same time, it drives the sport. So, people who hate PBC, we know why. PBC, is affiliated with Mayweather. Looks like me. As far as the skin tone, it's run by Al Heyman, who's in the shadows. Doesn't come out, doesn't do interviews, doesn't do anything, but yet people hate this man. We know why. Skin tone is probably why. Because, they'll cry about inactivity, but yet the way boxing is today, no matter what network you're fighting on, what promotional company, these guys are inactive. Especially when you get to a certain level, they're not fighting as much because, I'm not an insider. I don't have not a boxing businessman or anything, but you gotta look at it like this. If it's a business, some people are in the habit of making money, right? So you look at, let's go start with Top Rank, right? Top Rank, usually Barbarian, they had a nice monopoly for a long time. They've been in the sport for, 60, 70 years. Barbarian, right? He's a promoter. And I'm pretty sure he don't always come out of his pocket to promote fighters. I'm pretty sure he has sponsors and people that back him and, investors and things like that, that when he wants to promote an event, these guys, trust in him that he's going to make them some money. So when you look at Top Rank, they already had, so many great fighters come through their stables that they're well known. They're very well known. Give me 1 second. Sorry. So, they already have, reputation, you know, they already have certain advantages when it comes to, getting fighters, and they have a nice stable of fighters. They've always had a great stable of fighters, and you know, Bob Arum's been around, like I said, for a long time in boxing. The man's almost 100, and he's been in boxing since the 60s, 50s, 60s. Like he's it's a long time, man. So he's a stable of boxing. His foot is all the way in the door. Now, you look at him and how he promotes fights. He makes money off the fights. He's looking to, he's not to say he doesn't want guys to be superstars, but he can tell that he's in that business of making money off the fighters. Where PBC is in the habit of trying to maximize the money fighters can get so that everybody can eat. So it's two different ways of thinking. Then you got Matchroom, and then you have the Zone, right? Golden Boy doesn't have a big stable of fighters, so they're not gonna produce. They're not gonna produce their own shows like that. Like they're not like Top Rank can, a promotion company can. They have so many fighters, and they have, they don't have the bigger stars as far as like PBC or Zone. The Zone and PBC, they usually have a more stable of bigger names, right? Where Top Rank, they have the fighters, but they don't have necessarily the huge names, but they have enough fighters that they can put together cards frequently. And you can put together frequent cards. You can make money, especially if the cards are good or decent enough where you're not paying the fighters too much. The fighters are staying active, and you're making a profit. And then you gotta remember, they were USA Today, the USA Network. They moved around a lot. HBO, and they've had some networks that they've used. And now you have ESPN, which is a sports network. And networks put money into these fights too. They don't just show the fight on TV and the promoter just does everything. They help promote these fights because it's on their network. So they're looking to get views. The promoter's looking to get views, and the investors want the views. So people gotta eat. And it costs money to, get these venues, pay these fighters, pay their training staffs, pay these referees and judges. Manager Marty spoke about this on his channel, and I asked him some questions about it, and he answered it, and we were in agreement. It's like, this stuff costs money. So I'm pretty sure, this is my opinion, promoters ain't just coming out their pocket, especially for those big venues, like maybe some smaller venues where they trying to bring up some fighters and get a fighter a couple of fights under his belt, that he's fighting in the local areas. They probably got money for that. But you talking about Madison Square Garden or some shit, come on, them dudes, it's got investors, this dude's putting money in this shit. And they looking for a profit. So when you look at Top Rank, they looking for a profit. So they can, like I said, they can put on these venues. They'll have guys like, we'll use Oscar Valdez. He's a name, but he's not a huge name. They were trying to push him a little bit, but they knew that they couldn't push him too far. He wasn't on the level of a Shakur Stevenson. Then he lost to Navarrete after they tried to re-push him, because they were trying to make money out of him. He does have a little fan base with Mexico, but he doesn't have the, he's not on a level, to really push him as a A-list boxer. But you can definitely push him, on free TV. So remember, ESPN, even though, they're on cable and you have to pay for cable, if you have cable, it's a free network on cable. So most people now have cable, or they have the app. Now it's about apps. Because remember, back in the days, people, you used to be able to watch fights on ABC, Wild World Sports, CBS. Fights, regular fights would be, fights would be shown, unless it was a big fight, shown on regular TV. If it was a highly anticipated fight, then you had to go to HBO to watch it. This is back in the 80s and, back in the 80s and the 90s, right? In the 90s, it started going to USA and, ESPN started showing fights and stuff like that because the cable networks were getting popular. And on, TV, like now you go on these apps, you're not going to get CBS, regular CBS, ABC and all. You're going to get like the smaller CBSs, like the CBS News, and you can live in New York, but if you get an app like Tubi, you'll get CBS in California somewhere. You're not going to get the real CBS you're looking for. It's showing live television, live football games and all that. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get the regular News 12. You're going to get like a News 12 in Cleveland somewhere. So with these apps, they, we're not, even with the apps, you're not getting regular TV. Like regular TV used to be free. And to put those fights, they're not, you don't normally put on a fight like a Oscar Valdez, Burchett on a pay-per-view fight, because it's not really pay-per-view. That's more of a it's not a highly anticipated fight. Not saying it's not a good fight, but it's a good fight, but it's not highly anticipated where people are demanding to see that fight. It's a high demand. So you gotta look at, the evolution of television. That's what I'm trying to say. So, ESPN and Top Rank, they're able to show fights, a little bit more frequently to the public. So their numbers, they're gonna get numbers regardless, because like I said, it's on TV now. ESPN has the ESPN Plus app, where if it's like a, fighter like Shakur Stevenson, or if it's like a Lomachenko, one of those guys, they even, saying the app is cheap, and, they can, if you got 10 million people, 20 million people with that app, and they're all viewing, they're gonna get some views. If you got 20 million people watching the fight on TV, or 1 million people watching the fight on TV, that's almost equivalent as majority of these pay-per-views, probably even more views, because it's free. People will see it. And then you got replays and stuff. And they also, because it's not a pay-per-view fight, they don't, and because of the contracts, these guys are getting paid, pretty much a base salary, like a base, check for the fight. So they're gonna get paid for the fight. Say it's Oscar Valdez, he gets paid, I'm just using him as an example, he gets paid to fight Navarrete $750,000, but he ain't gonna see no revenue from the no pay-per-view box, because it's not pay-per-view. So they're able to just cut these checks, my fault. They're able to just cut these checks and pay the fighters, and then they collecting the rest of the money. They're getting they're gonna get the money from the arenas. They're gonna get the money from the views that they need. So everybody's making money. So, and they don't, if you notice, like I said, they they're not in the habit of trying to make guys pay-per-view fighters because that costs more money for them to produce those fights. So you're not going to see, Top Rank really push guys to become mega stars. And in boxing, to be honest, the best way to become a mega star is to get knockouts. If you're getting knockouts and you're producing knockouts, you're definitely gonna be a star in the sport. Tank Davis, let's look at what they have in common. Tank Davis, star, mega star. He's one of the faces of boxing, gets knockouts. Canelo, he gets knockouts. David Benavidez, he's not a superstar yet, but he gets knockouts. He gets the stoppages. You look at Mike Tyson, knockouts. Ali was getting knockouts. Floyd Mayweather, before he became Money Mayweather, he was getting knockouts. He was Pretty Boy. Right? Roy Jones, knockouts. Lennox Lewis, knockouts. So these dudes was getting KOs. And, you know what I mean? So people want to see the knockouts, man. Now, right now, Haney, the reason why Haney is building his name up in the sport is because he's fighting the big names. De La Hoya was another one that got knockouts, but De La Hoya was also fighting everybody. And that's the blueprint that Devin Haney is following. He's getting in there and he's beating these guys. And that's what De La Hoya did. Even though he got some knockouts too, but he got in the ring with everybody. He didn't duck no smoke. I'm not saying other fighters are, but De La Hoya was getting in the ring with people. So he was giving you those blockbuster fights, that people clamored for. And then that's what's making Devin Haney a superstar in the sport. So if you look at Matchroom has a international fan base, right? So their fan base is mostly England. They got England over there. They got Russian, all that Europe stuff going on over there, right? So they got Asia, Top Rank. When they had Pacquiao, they were able to get that pay-per-view money and produce big fights with Pac-Man because he was a global, pretty much almost like I don't want to say icon like that, but he was a global draw. You got the Philippines watching the fight. You got people from Asia watching the fight. And you have the United States. People love this fight. So he's another one. Got knockouts. So when you want to become a star in the sport of boxing, a superstar and be a pay-per-view fighter, you gotta produce knockouts. You gotta be blockbuster. You gotta be must-see. People want to see the knockout. So. People want to see the knockout, man. Not saying that's all that matters. I just gave Devin Haney the reason why Devin Haney and Mayweather, he built his career too off of people wanting to see him lose. So when he became Money Mayweather, all he had to do was just keep winning. And, people kept buying into it. So now, what happens is, like I said, Matchroom, they have a global they're not really trying to push too much pay-per-view because they got the app. So they got millions of viewers on that app. They don't need pay-per-view like that. Same with Top Rank, they got those apps. They don't need pay-per-view like that. And, the guys that fight with them, they're going to get probably more fights because they're going to have more fighters in their stable, and it's about having opponents. Because if you're going to put a pay-per-view fight on, you got to have the right opponents. One thing that happens with PBC is, when you started putting guys like Charlo, not to discredit them, but they're not really big draws. They got a big following in Texas, but that's about it. They're not must-see fighters. Terrence Crawford gets knockouts, and he's not really the biggest draw. Spence is still a bigger draw than him, I think. Spence gets knockouts. And Spence is, he's more exciting. His fights are exciting. People love to watch Spence fight. But when it comes to PBC, their whole objective is starting with Mayweather. is to produce the biggest shows, the best shows. So they're gonna put a lot of their fighters. They're trying to push to become pay-per-view, and it takes partners to do that. And so what happens when you start fighting pay-per-view, you're gonna probably constantly fight pay-per-view. Like Tank Davis, he's not gonna fight a regular fight. You know what I'm saying? Like even when you looked at like Mike Tyson, once he became that pay-per-view star, he was still fighting on HBO, but that was a different time. You know, and he wasn't fighting the highly anticipated opponents like he was fighting guys like Frank Bruno. You know, those were anticipated fights. Like Holyfield, people wanted to see that. So you could see pay-per-view back then with blockbuster fights. Sugar Ray Leonard happened. Those were events. You know, Tyson, Spinks, Tyson Lennox Lewis wasn't really a big fight because they were at the end of their careers and Tyson was a shell of himself. But Tyson Holyfield was a big fight. Also was a big fight. You know, De La Hoya and Trinidad was a highly anticipated fight. De La Hoya Mayweather was a big fight. You know, those are more fights that people would like to pay to see. Tank Davis versus Garcia, his name Hector Garcia. That's not really a pay-per-view fight. See, PBC was doing great when they had Fox and they had networks, but they may not have had enough stable fighters. I'm not sure, but you gotta have opponents, and like I said, Top Rank and the Zone, ESPN, and they have more fighters. To me, I think that they can match opponents with, and they can put on. They're not trying to make the biggest fights. They just want to put guys in the ring, opponents in the ring with their stars, so that they can, sell these cards. PBC, when you start making guys pay-per-view, like Charlo, you gotta give him some big fights. You can't have Charlo in there fighting Derevchenko. That's not really a pay-per-view fight. So this is why you see mediocre numbers with the pay-per-view bars. Even though everybody's eating off of it, these networks, they're not gonna promote those fights because the names are not big enough. So even though it's pay-per-view or whatever, they're not gonna get the promotion. And unless the promoter himself is pushing the fight to promote it, and it's only so, like I said, if you don't have enough investors and the money to back to do all that, it's going to be hard to sustain keeping all these guys pay-per-view. Now, if you got 6-7 pay-per-view fighters, those are big events, man. Those are events, man. That if you gotta pay, you gotta get the arena. You gotta seating arrangements. You gotta be able to charge people for these fights. People gotta want to pay to see these fights. You gotta pay referees, judges.
Why didn't you tell that to a jury 34 years ago?
Flights. You're gonna be paying for hotels. You're looking to put in millions of dollars just in these fights. So if you got a guy like a Charlo, somebody like that, that's not really a pay-per-view fighter, and putting him in there with a Tony Harrison, or I'm just using examples. Those are not pay-per-view fights. Now, if it would have been like a Charlo Andre, something that fans may want to see, you can probably add that into a pay-per-view fight, even though it won't generate crazy numbers. But now the winner will definitely become a pay-per-view star because they'll be on the bigger and better things. So when Mayweather beat De La Hoya, that propelled him to become a pay-per-view star because he had to beat the man. But if he would have been fighting guys like Balderman, nobody wants to see that on pay-per-view. But now he became such a household name by beating De La Hoya, and when he beat Pac-Man, he earned the right really to go out on his, you know what I'm saying, the way he wanted to go out. He fought Andre Berto, people didn't like that fight. That wasn't really a pay-per-view fight, but because he's Mayweather and he's highly anticipated, and when he fights, it's always an event. He's going to bring certain amount of numbers where, regardless of who he fights, is going to be on pay-per-view. And you know, same thing with Tank. Tank, even though, you know, we look at Hector Garcia, it's not really a big fight like that on pay-per-view, something to be paying for, but you know, because he's Tank Davis, fans, he to me, he's not on Mayweather's level just yet, but he has a decent enough fan base. I don't think big enough for all his fights on pay-per-view just yet. Yeah, he knocks out or beats Shakur Stevenson or Devin Haney. Don't look back at pay-per-view. Canelo, he's a pay-per-view fighter. He has the whole Mexico plus the West Coast and Texas and the Midwest on his side. So he's a big draw. And he can fight pay-per-view whenever he fights, because he's going to always, you know, sell a few 100,000 views because of his fan base. But all his fights are not really, you know, people want to see. Shouldn't be pay-per-view, but people are going to, because of the days and age that we live in and the numbers that he generate with views. If you put him on free TV, he's probably going to do 2 million views, right? But if he's fighting Avni or Durham, it's not a pay-per-view fight. But because he's a Canelo Alvarez, he's still going to sell. He still has a certain fan base that's going to sell, you know, that's going to get views. And then now, the flip side of that is, if you can fight it, to me, if you can fight an Avenue Dome, and though he's my mandatory, why can't you fight David Benavidez, who's your mandatory? You fight pay-per-view anyway, so you might as well make that fight happen. You know, you're going to get paid off that fight. And then it's a PBC fight, so you're going to get extra money. But, you know, so PBC, to me, you know, if they can, you know, pick up more opponents for these guys, you know, they had Showbox, you know, Showtime. You know, Showtime is a cable paying. You got to pay for Showtime even if you have cable. So that's an extra incentive. So they're not really going to promote too many fights on a network that you got to pay just to see, you know, just to get viewers, just to view it. So you're going to pay for cable, then you have to pay extra for Showtime. You know, then it's a pay-per-view fight, you're going to pay for that. So, you know, that costs money. So I'm looking at it from a business aspect, and I'm looking at it from a consumer aspect. Because I'm a consumer. I'm not in the business of boxing. I'm just a consumer, and I'm just looking at it from those outside angles. So PBC, you know, like I said, their fighters are making money on PBC. That's why guys go over there. They don't gotta fight much because they're getting back money from pay-per-view, and everybody's eating because they're getting their money on the back end. So whatever that money, whatever they make, the fighters getting that percentage out of that. With Top Rank is paying them fighters the base, whatever they agree to in that contract. That's what you're getting paid, and they're collecting the rest of that money, all that back money. And that's how they probably paying off the investors and paying off the, you know, and the networks is getting their money off those views and, you know, things like that. So, you know, that's just my opinion with PBC. PBC, I think if they have the opponents, like I said, to put on pay-per-view all the time, or I'm not saying all they do is pay-per-view, but to put on pay-per-view as often as they would like, you gotta have opponents to justify people paying that type of money. So I think if they had more opponents, like Boost is running out of opponents, you know, that's signed with PBC, And there's no more Showtime, even though they have the Amazon. Amazon is now an app. We should be seeing more fights, like more free fights, things like that, to push, other fighters. And not only that, so we can see the PBC produce some fights and some matches. And until we start to see that, they're gonna continue to get ridiculed, man. And the blame always falls at the end. Is that we're incompetent, we don't know what we're doing. But anyways, man, I gotta go. We change little homie's diaper, and I'll be back at you, man. If you agree, hit the thumbs up, give me a like, drop your comments. We try not to deal with no hate on this channel, no gossip, but I would like to hear your thoughts and comments. Also, man, go get my book, man. Two-Face, Rise of a Menace. Also have another book out, Good Friday, and Secrets of Deception, man. Go check those books out, man. If you're into reading, give you something different, give you a nice little read. And, I'll holler back at you guys, man. Peace.